Jasmine Washington stood in the airport terminal, her cheek still burning from the slap, watching as the entire flight crew was escorted away by security. Her husband Malcolm stood beside her, now wearing the airline executive badge nobody had noticed before. News cameras flashed, capturing the historic moment. Jasmine touched her pregnant belly, thinking about how a routine flight had turned into national headlines about racial discrimination. Before we dive into this shocking story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about everyday people standing up against injustice. Trust me, you won't believe how this flight attendant's career crashed and burned faster than a plane without wings. Jasmine Washington was running late. At 32 years old and 7 months pregnant, she moved through Atlanta International Airport with as much speed as her body would allow. The baby kicked as if sharing her anxiety about potentially missing this flight. "Easy there, little one," she whispered, patting her rounded belly. "We're going to make it." This trip to Atlanta wasn't just any family visit. As an accomplished architect with her own successful firm in Chicago, Jasmine rarely had time for extended family gatherings. But this reunion was special, honoring her grandmother's 90th birthday. Grandma Rose had been a civil rights activist in Atlanta during the 1960s, marching alongside Dr. King himself. The stories she'd shared throughout Jasmine's childhood had shaped her worldview and given her strength during difficult times. Jasmine checked her phone again, reading the latest text from her husband Malcolm. "Still stuck in meeting. We'll try to get the late flight tonight. Love you both." She smiled, knowing both referred to her and their unborn daughter. After 5 years of trying to conceive, this pregnancy was their miracle. Malcolm's promotion to senior executive at SkyBlue Airlines had come with demanding hours, but he promised to join her for at least part of the weekend celebration. Reaching the gate just as final boarding was announced, Jasmine handed her first-class ticket to the agent and made her way down the jetway. She'd used some of Malcolm's flight benefits for the upgrade, hoping the extra comfort would make the journey easier on her pregnant body. As she stepped onto the plane, Jasmine immediately noticed subtle shifts in expression from some white passengers, the slight stiffening, the questioning glances at her first-class boarding pass, the unnecessary shuffling to create distance as she passed. These were microaggressions she'd grown accustomed to recognizing, little reminders that even in 2025, some people still made assumptions based on skin color. "Welcome aboard," said a flight attendant with blonde hair pulled into a tight bun. Her name tag read Brittany Reynolds. Her smile disappeared the moment she looked at Jasmine, replaced by a cool, professional mask. "Seat 3A is on your right," Brittany said flatly, already looking past Jasmine to the white businessman behind her. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to SkyBlue Airlines. Can I help you find your seat?" The contrast was striking. Jasmine settled into her window seat, observing as Brittany warmly greeted every white passenger who boarded, offering to help with bags and providing pre-flight beverages. When Jasmine pressed her call button to request water, Brittany glanced her way, nodded curtly, and continued chatting with an older white couple across the aisle. 10 minutes later, Jasmine pressed the button again. Brittany finally approached. "I'm very busy with boarding," she said, voice clipped. "What do you need?" "Just some water, please," Jasmine replied politely. "Doctor's orders to stay hydrated during pregnancy." "I'll bring it when I can," Brittany responded before walking away to immediately offer a white man in the row behind a choice of water or orange juice. Jasmine took a deep breath. This wasn't her first experience with discriminatory treatment, and she reminded herself of her grandmother's advice: document everything, maintain your dignity, and know when to speak up. She discreetly began recording timestamps of interactions in her phone's notes app. As the boarding process completed, 2 more flight attendants appeared in the first-class cabin. The head flight attendant, a woman in her mid-40s with Karen Miller on her name tag, consulted briefly with Brittany. Both glanced in Jasmine's direction before Karen nodded and moved toward the front of the plane. The third attendant, a tall man named Tyler Brooks, smirked as Brittany whispered something to him while looking in Jasmine's direction. Across the aisle, an older white woman with silver hair noticed the exchange and frowned slightly. She caught Jasmine's eye and offered a small, apologetic smile. Her name was Elaine Hoffman, Jasmine would later learn, one of the few passengers who seemed to recognize the unequal treatment unfolding before them. As the plane began taxiing, Jasmine still hadn't received her water. The aircraft climbed steadily through clouds, leaving Chicago behind. Once the seatbelt sign turned off, the first-class cabin buzzed with activity as flight attendants began their service. Brittany moved efficiently through the cabin, taking drink orders from white passengers with practiced charm, laughing at their jokes, and addressing them by name. When she finally reached Jasmine, her demeanor shifted noticeably. "Something to drink?" Brittany asked, avoiding eye contact. "Water, please," Jasmine replied. "And if possible, could I have an aisle seat? With the pregnancy, I'll need to use the restroom frequently." Brittany's lips tightened. "The flight is full. You should have requested special accommodations before boarding." "I understand," Jasmine said calmly. "In that case, could you please make sure the flight attendants allow me to access the bathroom when needed?" My doctor advised. "We don't block bathroom access," Brittany interrupted. "But during meal service and turbulence, everyone must remain seated. No exceptions." Before Jasmine could respond, Brittany had moved to the next row, where she leaned down to speak with a white businessman. "Mr. Davidson, would you prefer the chicken or pasta today? And I remembered you like extra bread." 20 minutes later, drinks had been served to everyone except Jasmine. When she pressed her call button again, Tyler appeared instead of Brittany. "Yes?" he asked, eyebrow raised. "I still haven't received my water," Jasmine explained. Tyler sighed dramatically. "Brittany must have forgotten. I'll tell her." He walked away without bringing the water himself. From the galley, Jasmine overheard snippets of conversation between the crew members. "Always the most demanding ones," Karen was saying. "Playing the pregnancy card," Brittany replied. "Probably just trying to get free upgrades." Tyler laughed. "Did you see her bag? Knockoff designer. Definitely doesn't belong up here." Jasmine felt her cheeks burn. Her knockoff was actually a limited edition handbag from a black designer that had been featured in Vogue. The casual racism cut deep, reminding her of stories her grandmother had told about more overt discrimination during the civil rights era. The methods had become more subtle, but the prejudice remained. Across the aisle, Elaine Hoffman shifted uncomfortably, clearly having overheard the comments as well. She caught Jasmine's eye again and shook her head slightly. When meal service began, Jasmine watched as other passengers were presented with options and served promptly. When Tyler finally reached her, he placed a tray in front of her without a word. "Excuse me," Jasmine said. "What are the meal options today?" "This is what's left," Tyler replied. The chicken was more popular. Jasmine looked down at the unappetizing pasta dish, noticeably different from the steaming plates other passengers had received. Her water glass was still empty. She began discreetly recording the interactions on her phone, angling it to capture video without being obvious. Her grandmother had always emphasized the importance of evidence. "Your word against theirs will never be enough," she'd say. "But a picture is worth 1,000 words." Throughout the meal service, Jasmine observed as Brittany and Tyler attended attentively to white passengers, refilling drinks, offering extra bread, and checking on meal satisfaction. No one approached Jasmine to ask how her meal was or if she needed anything. When she pressed her call button to request water again, no one responded for 15 minutes. Finally, Karen approached. "Is there a problem?" she asked, voice carrying just enough to draw attention from nearby passengers. "I still haven't received any water," Jasmine explained quietly. "And I need to use the restroom." Karen's expression remained impassive. "Brittany said she served you water earlier." "The bathroom is occupied at the moment." "No, she didn't," Jasmine replied firmly. "I've been asking since before takeoff." Karen's eyes narrowed slightly. I'm sure it was just an oversight. I'll bring you water when I can. She walked away without acknowledging the bathroom request. Jasmine closed her eyes briefly, feeling the baby kick as if in protest. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind, "Pick your battles wisely, but never let anyone strip you of your dignity." When she opened her eyes, she found Elaine watching her with concern. The older woman reached across the aisle, offering her own untouched water glass. "Here, dear," she said quietly. "You shouldn't have to ask 3 times." "Thank you," Jasmine replied, touched by the simple act of kindness. Brittany, noticing the exchange, approached immediately. "Miss Hoffman, would you like a fresh water? I can bring it right away." The contrast couldn't have been clearer. Elaine's eyebrows rose slightly. "Actually," Elaine said, "I think you should bring water for this young lady first. She's been asking since boarding." Brittany's professional mask slipped for a moment, revealing a flash of irritation. "Of course," she said tightly. "Right away." As she walked away, Jasmine heard her mutter something under her breath that sounded suspiciously like playing the race card. The tension in the cabin was building, and Jasmine knew from experience that things would likely get worse before they got better. She adjusted her position, feeling a twinge of discomfort in her lower back, and continued documenting everything on her phone. 2 hours into the flight, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom, "Folks, we're experiencing some turbulence ahead. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin. Passengers, return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts." The plane began to shudder almost immediately. Jasmine gripped her armrests, feeling the baby react to the movement with increased activity. A sharp pain radiated across her lower abdomen, not contractions, but definitely concerning. The pressure on her bladder intensified. When the turbulence temporarily subsided, Jasmine unbuckled her seatbelt and attempted to stand. Brittany appeared instantly. "Ma'am, the seatbelt sign is still on." "I understand," Jasmine replied, one hand supporting her belly. "But I'm 7 months pregnant and need to use the restroom urgently. It's a medical necessity." Brittany planted herself in the aisle. "Rules apply to everyone. You'll have to wait." Jasmine noticed that just minutes earlier, an elderly white man had been escorted to the bathroom by Tyler despite the seatbelt sign. "I saw you allow another passenger to use the restroom," Jasmine pointed out calmly. "I'm experiencing pressure and discomfort that could affect my baby." "That was different," Brittany snapped. "He's a platinum member." Jasmine took a deep breath. "I don't think airline status supersedes medical needs. I need to use the bathroom now." "You should have gone before the turbulence," Brittany replied dismissively. "Return to your seat, or I'll have to report disruptive behavior." The pain intensified, and Jasmine felt a wave of anxiety for her baby's well-being. Several nearby passengers were now watching the exchange. "I'm not being disruptive," Jasmine said, keeping her voice level despite her discomfort. "I'm making a reasonable medical request. If something happens to my baby because you're preventing me from using the restroom, that will be your responsibility." Brittany's face flushed. "Are you threatening me? Playing the pregnancy card wasn't enough, so now you're playing the race card too?" Jasmine blinked in shock. "Excuse me? I never mentioned race. I'm simply asking to use the bathroom because I'm pregnant." "I know your type," Brittany hissed, voice low but intense. "Always looking for special treatment, always claiming discrimination when you don't get your way." Karen and Tyler had now joined Brittany, forming an intimidating wall of blue uniforms. Other passengers were watching openly now, some looking uncomfortable, others recording discreetly on their phones. "This passenger is being uncooperative," Brittany informed her colleagues loudly enough for others to hear. "Refusing to follow safety instructions." "I simply need to use the restroom," Jasmine repeated, feeling increasingly distressed. "This is a medical necessity." "Ma'am, return to your seat now," Karen ordered. "Or we'll be forced to take action." "What action?" Jasmine asked, reaching for her phone. I'd like to document this refusal of medical accommodation. What happened next occurred so quickly that later, when reviewing passenger videos, investigators would need to slow the footage to fully capture the sequence of events. As Jasmine raised her phone, Brittany lunged forward, shouting, "She's recording me without consent." Her open palm connected with Jasmine's cheek with a crack that silenced the entire cabin. The shock of the slap sent Jasmine stumbling backward into her seat. Her phone clattered to the floor. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Jasmine's hand went to her face, then protectively to her belly. The silence shattered as multiple passengers stood up in protest. "You just assaulted a pregnant woman," Elaine cried, rising from her seat. "That's battery," called another passenger. "I'm an attorney, and I witnessed it." Brittany seemed frozen, perhaps just realizing what she had done. Karen quickly stepped forward. "Everyone return to your seats," she commanded. "This passenger has been combative and aggressive. We are handling the situation." "The only aggression I saw came from your flight attendant," said a young man who had been recording the entire interaction. "I've got it all on video." Tyler moved toward the man. "Sir, recording crew members is against airline policy. You need to delete that footage immediately." "Not happening," the man replied. "This is evidence of assault." Jasmine remained seated, trembling slightly, one hand still on her cheek, the other protectively cradling her belly. The baby was moving frantically, responding to her surge of stress hormones. "I need medical attention," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "And I want to file a formal complaint. I need all of your names and employee numbers." "We'll be diverting the flight," Karen announced. "This level of disruption cannot continue. The only person who should be removed from this flight is the attendant who just committed assault," Elaine stated firmly. The cabin had divided into clear factions, those outraged by the treatment of Jasmine, and a smaller group supporting the crew's authority. As the confrontation escalated, the pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a situation in the cabin, we will be making an emergency landing in Dallas. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Flight attendants, prepare for landing." Brittany smirked slightly, leaning toward Jasmine. "Hope it was worth it," she whispered. "Enjoy explaining to the police why you disrupted an entire flight." What she didn't know was that the true reckoning awaited her on the ground, and it would come from a source she never anticipated. As the plane began its descent toward Dallas, the first-class cabin had transformed into a tense battleground of whispered conversations and uneasy glances. Jasmine sat quietly in her seat, still processing the shock of being physically assaulted while pregnant. A few rows behind her, a man in an impeccable charcoal suit who had been observing the entire situation finally unbuckled his seatbelt and approached. With East Asian features and a calm, authoritative demeanor, he nodded respectfully to Jasmine before speaking. "Ms. Washington. My name is Benjamin Chen. I'm a civil rights attorney specializing in discrimination cases, and I witnessed everything that happened." Karen immediately intercepted. "Sir, the seatbelt sign is illuminated. Return to your seat immediately." Benjamin turned to her with practiced composure. "I'm aware of federal aviation regulations, Ms. Miller. I'm also aware of federal assault statutes and the airline's legal obligation to ensure passenger safety, particularly for those with medical conditions." He handed Jasmine his business card. "I'd like to offer my assistance. What happened to you was not only unprofessional but illegal." The simple act of someone believing her, someone with legal authority, brought tears to Jasmine's eyes. She had spent so much of her life being dismissed when speaking up about discrimination that this validation felt like a lifeline. "Thank you," she whispered. As Benjamin returned to his seat at Karen's insistence, Jasmine noticed other passengers were watching with varying reactions. Some avoided eye contact, uncomfortable with confrontation. Others nodded encouragingly or offered sympathetic smiles. She closed her eyes, remembering a similar moment from her childhood. She'd been the only black student in an advanced math class when her teacher had accused her of cheating, claiming her perfect test score wasn't possible for someone from her neighborhood. Her grandmother had come to the school, calm but unyielding, with documentation of Jasmine's gifted status and previous achievements. "Never let them make you question your worth," she'd said afterward. "And never stay silent when you know you're right." A gentle tap on her shoulder interrupted her thoughts. Elaine had moved to the empty seat beside her. "They can't tell me where to sit during an emergency landing," the older woman said with surprising defiance. "Are you all right, dear? How's the baby?" "I think we're okay," Jasmine replied, grateful for the compassion. "Just shaken. I've been flying this airline for 30 years, Elaine said, shaking her head. "Never seen anything like this. That flight attendant should be fired immediately." Across the aisle, Benjamin had begun quietly organizing other witnesses. He moved efficiently through the cabin during the landing preparation, collecting contact information and brief statements from those willing to testify about what they'd seen. Meanwhile, the crew huddled near the front galley, speaking in hushed tones and occasionally glancing back at Jasmine with obvious contempt. They seemed to be constructing their version of events, preparing to present Jasmine as the instigator. "They're building a narrative," Benjamin explained when he returned briefly. "Standard procedure when they know they've crossed a line. They'll claim you were belligerent, refused commands, possibly even threatened them." "But that's not what happened," Jasmine protested. "That's why witness testimonies and videos are crucial," he replied. "Your word against 3 crew members would be challenging. But with multiple witnesses and video evidence, we have a much stronger position." Jasmine tried to text Malcolm again about what had happened, but the airplane mode restrictions prevented the messages from sending. She felt increasingly isolated and vulnerable. As the plane touched down in Dallas, Tyler's voice came over the intercom, "Ladies and gentlemen, we've landed at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. Local authorities have been notified of the situation and will be boarding to address the passenger disturbance. Please remain seated until law enforcement has resolved the situation." The implication was clear: Jasmine was being framed as the problem, not the victim. The familiar knot of anxiety tightened in her chest, the same feeling she'd experienced during traffic stops when officers approached with hands near their weapons, or when security followed her through high-end stores. As a successful black woman, she'd learned to navigate these situations, but the stakes felt infinitely higher with her baby involved. Benjamin leaned across the aisle. "When the officers board, say nothing beyond identifying yourself. Request medical attention immediately due to your pregnancy and the physical assault. I'll intervene as your counsel." Jasmine nodded, gathering her strength for what was to come. Elaine took her hand and squeezed it reassuringly. "I've got at least 6 different angles of that slap on my phone," a young woman called from a few rows back. "Already backed up to the cloud. They can't delete this evidence." The crew's confident expressions faltered slightly at this announcement. "What do you think about Brittany's behavior toward a pregnant passenger?" Comment number 1: If you believe there's never any justification for physically assaulting a customer, especially one who's pregnant. Have you ever witnessed discrimination on public transportation? Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more stories about people standing up against injustice. Now, the plane has landed in Dallas, and police are about to board. Will Jasmine be treated fairly by law enforcement? What evidence will matter most in this situation? And how will the airline respond to a flight attendant assaulting a pregnant passenger? Let's find out what happens next. The plane taxied to a remote gate at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, away from the normal terminals and passenger traffic. Through the windows, Jasmine could see police vehicles with flashing lights and what appeared to be airline management cars parked on the tarmac. Her heart sank at the show of force. It looked like the response to a terrorist threat rather than a dispute with a flight attendant. "Standard intimidation tactic," Benjamin commented quietly, noticing her expression. "They're trying to frame this as a security issue rather than a service failure and assault." The seatbelt sign dinged off, but no one moved. Karen's voice came over the intercom, "Remain seated." Law enforcement will be boarding momentarily to handle the situation. Brittany and Tyler moved through the cabin, collecting evidence of the disruption from sympathetic passengers. They stopped at specific seats, particularly those occupied by passengers who had appeared annoyed by the delay. Yes, she was being difficult the entire flight, Jasmine overheard one businessman telling Tyler. Constantly demanding special treatment. Jasmine tried again to send a message to Malcolm, but with no success. The plane's Wi-Fi had been deactivated upon landing. She felt increasingly isolated and anxious about what awaited her on the ground. "They're building a case against you," Benjamin warned. "Once we deplane, I suggest you seek immediate medical attention for both the assault and to check on your baby's condition. Stress can trigger complications in pregnancy." Jasmine nodded, feeling another wave of pain across her abdomen. The baby had been moving less since the slap, and she couldn't help but worry. Elaine leaned over. "I'll stay with you," she promised. "They're not taking you anywhere alone." The cabin door opened, and 2 Dallas police officers boarded, followed by a woman in a Skyblue Airlines management uniform. Karen immediately approached them, speaking rapidly and gesturing toward Jasmine. "That's the disruptive passenger," they heard her say. "Refused to follow safety instructions, became verbally abusive, and threatened my crew." The officers moved down the aisle toward Jasmine, their expressions stern. Benjamin stood to intercept them. "Officers, I'm Benjamin Chen, attorney for Ms. Washington. My client is 7 months pregnant and has been physically assaulted by a member of this crew. She requires immediate medical attention." "Sir, please step aside," the first officer responded. "We need to speak with the passenger in question." "I respectfully decline to step aside while representing my client," Benjamin replied calmly. "And I should inform you that multiple passengers have video evidence of the assault, which has already been uploaded to secure cloud storage." This statement caused a visible reaction among the crew. Brittany's confident expression faltered, and she exchanged worried glances with Karen. The second officer, a woman with a more measured demeanor, addressed Jasmine directly. "Ma'am, can you tell us what happened?" Before Jasmine could respond, passengers from throughout the cabin began speaking up. The flight attendant slapped her. She was denied bathroom access despite being pregnant. "I have the whole thing on video. They've been discriminating against her the entire flight." The chorus of support was overwhelming. What had started as Jasmine's isolated struggle had transformed into collective outrage. The officers looked surprised by the unified response. The airline manager, clearly realizing the situation was more complex than the crew had suggested, stepped forward. "Perhaps we should discuss this off the aircraft. My client requires medical attention before any questioning," Benjamin insisted. "She's experiencing pregnancy complications potentially caused by the assault. Paramedics are standing by at the gate," the female officer assured them. "We can continue the conversation after medical assessment." As they prepared to deplane, Brittany made one last attempt to control the narrative, addressing nearby passengers loudly enough for the officers to hear. "We apologize for the disruption to your travel plans. Unfortunately, some passengers don't understand that safety regulations apply to everyone." Several passengers openly scoffed at this characterization. The young woman who had mentioned her video stood up. "I'd be happy to show the officers my recordings right now," she offered. "They clearly show who was disruptive and who was assaulted." Brittany's face paled. For the first time, she seemed to realize the severity of her actions and the potential consequences. As they moved toward the exit, Jasmine felt another sharp pain and stumbled slightly. Benjamin and Elaine immediately supported her on either side. "She needs medical attention now," Benjamin insisted. The officers nodded, allowing them to exit first. As they stepped into the jetway, Jasmine heard an unexpected announcement over the airport's PA system. "Attention all Skyblue Airlines executives. Please report immediately to Gate D23 for an emergency situation. Repeat, all Skyblue executives to Gate D23 immediately." Behind them, the crew exchanged confused glances. This was not standard protocol for a disruptive passenger situation. The female officer guided Jasmine toward the waiting paramedics while her partner detained the 3 flight attendants for questioning. Passengers streamed past, many stopping to offer supportive comments or share contact information as potential witnesses. As the paramedics began checking Jasmine's vitals and examining her for signs of trauma, she finally managed to get a cell signal. Her phone immediately buzzed with incoming messages, all from Malcolm. Flight delayed. Taking later connection. Just landed in Dallas. Where are you? Jasmine, there's an incident at the airport involving our flight. Are you okay? I'm at the gate. What's happening? Before she could reply, she heard a commotion at the end of the jetway. Looking up, she saw a group of people in business attire rushing toward the gate, led by a tall, distinguished black man whose face she knew better than her own. Malcolm Washington had arrived, and he didn't look happy. Malcolm Washington moved with purpose through the terminal, his executive badge prominently displayed, flanked by 3 other Sky Blue Airlines officials. At 6'3" with broad shoulders and an impeccable gray suit, he commanded attention naturally. But it was the controlled fury in his expression that parted the crowd before him. When he spotted Jasmine being attended to by paramedics, his professional composure briefly cracked. He rushed to her side, kneeling beside the gurney. "Jazz," he whispered, taking her hand. "Are you okay? The baby?" "We're all right," she assured him, though her voice trembled slightly. "But Malcolm, the flight attendant," she slapped me. "They wouldn't let me use the bathroom even though I told them about the pregnancy." Malcolm's jaw tightened. He turned to the paramedic. "What's her condition?" "Blood pressure's elevated, which is concerning for a pregnant woman," the paramedic replied. "No signs of premature labor, but we recommend a full examination at the hospital." Malcolm nodded, then kissed Jasmine's forehead gently. "I'll handle this. Then I'm taking you to get checked out properly." He stood and turned toward the gate where the 3 flight attendants were now being questioned by police officers. The crew's expressions shifted from defensive to confused as they recognized him approaching. "Mr. Washington," Karen began, forcing a professional smile. "We weren't expecting you to." "Save it, Karen," Malcolm interrupted, his voice quiet but sharp. "I want to know why my pregnant wife was denied bathroom access and physically assaulted on my airline." The color drained from Brittany's face as the implications hit her. She looked from Malcolm to Jasmine and back again, the connection finally registering. "Your wife?" she stammered. "Jasmine Washington," Malcolm confirmed. "My wife of 8 years. And, more relevantly at this moment, a passenger on this aircraft who was entitled to safe, respectful service, like every other passenger." He turned to the woman beside him. "Patricia, could you introduce yourself, please?" The stern-faced woman stepped forward. "Patricia Davis, Head of Human Resources for Sky Blue Airlines. We'll be conducting an immediate investigation into this incident." Another executive moved forward, a tablet in hand. "We've already received 17 videos from passengers documenting the events. Would you like to review them now, Mr. Washington?" Malcolm nodded grimly. "Play them." The videos were damning. From multiple angles, they showed Jasmine's polite requests being ignored, the discriminatory treatment compared to other passengers, and most explicitly, Brittany's unprovoked slap across Jasmine's face. The footage also captured the crew's attempts to intimidate witnesses afterward. As the final video ended, the terminal had grown silent. Passengers from the flight had gathered to watch, along with other travelers and airport staff. The 3 flight attendants stood frozen, their earlier confidence evaporated. Malcolm took a deep breath before speaking. "For those who don't know me, I'm Malcolm Washington, Senior Vice President of Customer Experience at Sky Blue Airlines." He turned to address the gathered crowd. "What you've just witnessed represents the absolute opposite of our service standards and human decency." He faced the crew again. Karen Miller, Brittany Reynolds, and Tyler Brooks, as of this moment, your employment with SkyBlue Airlines is terminated, effective immediately. Please surrender your credentials and company property. Brittany found her voice. You can't just fire us on the spot. There are procedures, union regulations. Actually, he can, Patricia interrupted. Physical assault of a passenger is grounds for immediate termination under Section 8.3 of your employment contract, which supersedes union protections. The additional evidence of discriminatory treatment only compounds the violation. Tyler looked stunned. This is an overreaction. We were just following protocols for disruptive passengers. Which passenger was disruptive? Malcolm challenged, gesturing toward the tablet. The videos show a pregnant woman politely requesting accommodation and being denied basic dignity in response. Karen attempted a different approach. Mr. Washington, with all due respect, your personal relationship with the passenger represents a conflict of interest in this disciplinary action. Malcolm's expression hardened. Let me be absolutely clear. If the passenger had been anyone else, any other human being requesting basic accommodation for a medical condition, my decision would be identical. The fact that she happens to be my wife only means I witnessed the aftermath of your discrimination firsthand. He paused, then continued more quietly. What none of you knew is that I've been working on an undercover investigation into discriminatory treatment reported by minority passengers on our routes. We've received 47 formal complaints in the past 6 months, 12 specifically naming this crew. This revelation silenced the crew's protests. Brittany's expression shifted from defiance to dawning horror as she realized the full implications of her actions. I've been collecting data, working with our diversity and inclusion team to address systemic issues, Malcolm continued. I never expected my own wife would become victim number 48. Or that the discrimination would escalate to physical assault. One of the police officers stepped forward. Ms. Reynolds, based on the video evidence and witness statements, we're placing you under arrest for assault. You have the right to remain silent. As Brittany was handcuffed, tears streaming down her face, Karen made one last desperate attempt. This isn't fair. She was provoked. That woman was being difficult all flight. That difficult woman, Benjamin Chen interjected, politely requested water and bathroom access while pregnant. The videos clearly show who escalated the situation. Malcolm turned back to Jasmine, who was watching the scene unfold with a complex mix of emotions. Justice was being served, but there was no joy in watching people's careers implode, even those who had mistreated her. He knelt beside her again. The company car is waiting to take you to the hospital. I'll join you as soon as I finish here. Jasmine nodded, then addressed the gathered crowd. I never wanted anyone to lose their job. I just wanted to be treated with the same respect as everyone else. Her simple statement hung in the air, a powerful reminder of how basic her request had been, and how dramatically it had been denied. As paramedics prepared to transport Jasmine to the hospital, Malcolm addressed the remaining passengers. On behalf of SkyBlue Airlines, I extend our deepest apologies for the inexcusable treatment you witnessed today. New crew members are being flown in to continue your journey to Atlanta. In the meantime, meal vouchers and compensation details are being processed for each of you. He turned to the airline executives. Patricia, please coordinate with legal about a formal response. I want a company-wide message addressing this incident by end of day. As Malcolm took charge of the situation, the power dynamic had completely reversed. The crew who had wielded their authority to discriminate now stood powerless, while the passenger they had attempted to intimidate was revealed to be connected to the highest levels of the company. It was a stunning reversal that no one aboard Flight SB-472 would soon forget. The sprawling atrium of Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport's Terminal D had transformed into an impromptu corporate headquarters for SkyBlue Airlines. Malcolm had commandeered a private lounge, where airline executives, legal representatives, and HR personnel were gathered around a conference table reviewing evidence from the incident. Patricia Davis, the airline's head of HR, was methodically interviewing passengers who had witnessed the discrimination and assault. Benjamin Chen assisted, ensuring testimonies were properly documented for both airline records and potential legal proceedings. Meanwhile, Malcolm divided his attention between the corporate response and regular updates from the hospital where Jasmine was undergoing examination. The latest text from her read, "Baby's heartbeat strong. Doctor says we're both okay, just monitoring blood pressure." His relief was palpable but temporary. There was still much to address. "We've collected 32 witness statements so far," Patricia reported, approaching Malcolm with a tablet. "All corroborate Mrs. Washington's account, and 24 specifically mention observing discriminatory treatment before the physical assault." Malcolm nodded grimly. "And the crew's defense?" Brittany Reynolds claims she felt threatened when Mrs. Washington raised her phone, believing she might be struck with it, Patricia replied, her skepticism evident. Karen Miller and Tyler Brooks are maintaining they were simply supporting their colleague in a difficult situation, though their stories are already showing inconsistencies when questioned separately. The lounge door opened as an older woman with silver hair entered, escorted by an airline representative. "Mr. Washington. This is Elaine Hoffman. She was seated near your wife and specifically requested to speak with you." Malcolm rose to greet her. "Ms. Hoffman, thank you for your support of my wife during this ordeal." Elaine clasped his extended hand warmly. "I couldn't stand by watching that treatment. I've been flying with Skyblue for 30 years, and I've never been so ashamed of your staff's behavior." "Please, sit down," Malcolm offered. "I'd appreciate hearing your perspective." Elaine settled into a chair, her posture straight despite her age. "The discrimination began the moment your wife boarded. The different tone, the ignored requests, the whispered comments they thought passengers couldn't hear. I was embarrassed for your company." She leaned forward, eyes intense. "Young man, I'm 85 years old. I marched in Selma. I've seen how racism adapts and disguises itself through the decades. What happened on that plane today wasn't subtle, it was blatant discrimination followed by violence against a pregnant woman. There must be consequences beyond just firing those 3 individuals." Malcolm nodded solemnly. "You're absolutely right, Ms. Hoffman. This is a systemic issue that requires systemic solutions." He turned to Patricia. "Where are we with the company-wide communication?" "Draft is ready for your review," she replied, passing him another tablet. "It acknowledges the incident, announces the terminations, and outlines immediate steps including mandatory retraining for all customer-facing staff." Malcolm read through the statement, making several edits to strengthen the language around zero tolerance for discrimination. As he worked, the door opened again, and the 3 terminated crew members were escorted in, accompanied by a union representative and 2 security officers. Brittany had been released on bail, her eyes red from crying. Karen looked defiant despite her circumstances, while Tyler appeared simply shell-shocked. All 3 had changed out of their uniforms into civilian clothes, a visual representation of their fall from authority. "Thank you for coming," Malcolm said, his tone professionally neutral. "Please sit." The union representative spoke first. "Mr. Washington, while we understand the seriousness of today's events, we believe immediate termination without a formal investigation violates our collective bargaining agreement." Malcolm gestured to the array of tablets displaying video evidence. "We have conducted an investigation, an expedited one, certainly, but thorough nonetheless. The evidence is unambiguous." He turned to address the former crew directly. "This meeting isn't about reconsidering your terminations. Those are final. This is about understanding why it happened, so we can prevent it from happening again." Brittany spoke up, her voice quavering. "Mr. Washington, I want to apologize. I never meant to." "Stop," Malcolm interrupted firmly. "Before you continue, I need to be clear, any statement you make here may be used in the civil case my wife will likely pursue, as well as in the criminal charges Ms. Reynolds is facing. You may want to consult with personal attorneys before speaking further." The union representative nodded agreement, but Karen leaned forward defiantly. "With all due respect, Mr. Washington, your wife wasn't the innocent victim she's portraying. She was demanding special treatment throughout the flight. Malcolm's expression remained calm, but his voice cooled noticeably. What special treatment, exactly? Water? Bathroom access? Basic courtesy? The videos show her requests were entirely reasonable, especially given her medical condition. We didn't know she was your wife, Tyler blurted out. Malcolm fixed him with a steady gaze. Would that have changed your behavior? Because that's precisely the problem. Every passenger deserves respectful treatment, not just executives' family members, not just first-class ticket holders, not just white passengers. He stood, pacing the room slowly. What's most disturbing is that none of you seem to recognize the discrimination in your actions. You genuinely believed you were just doing your jobs. Patricia Davis stepped forward, opening a folder. We've pulled your service records. All three of you have received previous complaints about discriminatory treatment, mostly dismissed because they couldn't be proven, or because they were isolated incidents. She paused meaningfully. But when we aggregate the data, a pattern emerges. She displayed a chart showing complaint statistics sorted by passenger demographics. The disparity was unmistakable. I've been with this airline for 15 years, Karen protested. One incident shouldn't erase my entire career. This wasn't one incident, Malcolm countered. This was the incident that was finally documented irrefutably. The data suggests there were many others. He returned to his seat, folding his hands on the table. I built my career on the belief that air travel should be equally dignified for everyone. That vision is clearly not being realized. His phone buzzed with another text from Jasmine. Doctor says we can leave soon. How are you doing? Malcolm texted back quickly, handling it. We'll pick you up shortly. Love you both. Looking up, he addressed the former crew one final time. Our passengers trusted you with their safety and dignity. You violated that trust today and, it seems, many times before. Your termination stand. As they were escorted out, Benjamin Chin approached. Mr. Washington, I've spoken with Mrs. Washington about potential legal options. While criminal charges against Ms. Reynolds will proceed regardless, the decision to pursue civil action against the individuals or the airline is more complex. Malcolm nodded. Jasmine and I will need to discuss that privately. For now, my priority is implementing immediate changes to prevent this from happening again. He turned to address the gathered executives. Effective immediately, I'm launching a comprehensive overhaul of our training programs, complaint procedures, and accountability measures. This incident isn't just a PR problem to manage, it's a fundamental failure of our values as a company. Patricia nodded in agreement. The diversity initiative you've been developing is more crucial than ever. Should we accelerate implementation? Yes, Malcolm confirmed. And I want to establish an independent review board for discrimination complaints, with representation from civil rights organizations and consumer advocacy groups. As the meeting concluded, Malcolm prepared to leave for the hospital. Elaine Hoffman approached him once more. Mr. Washington, I was impressed by how you handled this, she said. Too often, companies hide behind PR statements and vague promises. You're taking real action. Malcolm smiled tiredly. My grandmother was a civil rights activist in Alabama. She always said justice without accountability is just performance. I try to live by that. As he headed for the exit, his phone buzzed with notifications from social media. Videos of the incident were already going viral, with millions of views and thousands of comments. What had begun as a personal ordeal for Jasmine was rapidly becoming a national conversation about discrimination in the airline industry. The reckoning was just beginning. By the following morning, video footage of the incident had exploded across social media platforms. #SkyBlueSlap and #FlyingWhileblack were trending nationwide, with millions of views and hundreds of thousands of comments. Major news networks had picked up the story, running headlines like, "Pregnant Woman Slapped by Flight Attendant," husband fires entire crew, and discrimination at 30,000 feet, the SkyBlue Airlines controversy. Jasmine and Malcolm watched the coverage from their hotel room in Dallas, where they had decided to stay overnight for Jasmine to rest before continuing their journey to Atlanta. The doctor had cleared her to travel but recommended minimizing stress, a challenging prescription given the circumstances. "I never wanted this kind of attention," Jasmine sighed, turning away from the television where a panel of experts was debating the incident. "I just wanted to use the bathroom and be treated like everyone else." Malcolm wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "I know. But your experience has opened a floodgate. Look at this." He showed her his tablet, where thousands of comments and messages were pouring in from Black travelers and other minorities sharing similar experiences of discrimination during air travel. "People have been suffering in silence for years," he said quietly. "You've given them permission to speak up." His phone rang, the fourth call from SkyBlue's CEO in the past hour. Malcolm had been intentionally letting them go to voicemail, prioritizing time with Jasmine over corporate damage control. "You should take it," Jasmine encouraged. "They need your leadership right now." Malcolm answered, putting the call on speaker. "This is Washington." "Malcolm, we need you at the emergency press conference," the CEO's voice came through, tension evident. "The board is convening in an hour, and the media situation is escalating." "I'll join virtually," Malcolm replied firmly. "My wife's health comes first today." After some negotiation, they agreed on arrangements for Malcolm to participate remotely. While he prepared his notes, Jasmine's phone lit up with a call from Benjamin Chen. "Mrs. Washington, I wanted to update you before the news breaks. 3 more SkyBlue employees have come forward as whistleblowers, confirming that discriminatory practices were not only common but tacitly encouraged among certain crews." "How?" Jasmine asked, bewildered. "Apparently, some senior flight attendants, including Karen Miller, created an informal scoring system for difficult passengers, with racial minorities and individuals with disabilities disproportionately targeted. They shared these lists during crew changeovers." Malcolm, overhearing this, looked physically pained. "This happened under my watch," he said after Jasmine ended the call. "I was so focused on passenger satisfaction metrics that I missed the human reality." "You can't blame yourself for what others chose to do," Jasmine reminded him. "But you can lead the change now." The emergency press conference was broadcast live across major networks. From their hotel room, Malcolm appeared virtually alongside the CEO and board members who were assembled at company headquarters. The CEO began with a formal apology, acknowledging the inexcusable assault and discrimination experienced by Jasmine. He then introduced Malcolm, whose calm, measured delivery belied the emotion behind his words. "As an airline executive, I'm deeply disturbed by what happened," Malcolm stated. "As a Black man in America, I'm sadly unsurprised. And as the husband of the woman who was assaulted, I'm heartbroken and outraged." He outlined the immediate actions already taken, the terminations, the cooperation with criminal proceedings against Brittany Reynolds, and the internal investigation that had been launched. "But these steps are just the beginning," he continued. "Today, SkyBlue Airlines is announcing a fundamental overhaul of our training, reporting, and accountability systems." He introduced a comprehensive anti-discrimination initiative that would include mandatory bias training, anonymous reporting mechanisms for both passengers and employees, and the creation of a passenger advocacy board with representation from civil rights organizations. What Malcolm couldn't share publicly yet was that the board was considering a more substantial role for him in implementing these changes, potentially as the company's first Black CEO, though those discussions were still preliminary. As the press conference concluded, Jasmine's phone buzzed with a notification. A local news station had just published an exclusive interview with 5 former SkyBlue employees, all minorities, who detailed patterns of discrimination within the company culture. One former flight attendant, a young Black woman named Tasha Williams, described being repeatedly assigned to less desirable routes and systematically excluded from working in first class. "They told me my look wasn't what premium passengers expected," she explained, her voice breaking. I knew exactly what they meant. The media storm intensified throughout the day. Industry analysts debated the financial impact on Skyblue, with stock prices already dropping in response to the controversy. Civil rights organizations called for broader investigations into discrimination across the airline industry. Competitors issued statements affirming their own commitment to equality, though several faced immediate challenges from employees and customers sharing contradictory experiences. By evening, the story had evolved beyond Jasmine's individual experience to encompass systemic issues of race and power in commercial aviation. Social media was flooded with #MyFlyingWhileBlackStory posts, creating a massive virtual testimony to the pervasiveness of the problem. Through it all, Jasmine remained thoughtful about her unexpected role at the center of a national conversation. I keep thinking about Grandma Rose, she told Malcolm as they prepared for bed that night. How she marched and protested and put her body on the line for change. I didn't choose this fight, but now that I'm in it, I want to make it count for something beyond just us. Malcolm nodded, understanding perfectly. What are you thinking? I want to speak publicly, Jasmine decided. Not just about what happened to me, but about all the stories we're hearing now. People need to understand this isn't about one bad flight attendant or one isolated incident. The following morning, Jasmine gave her first interview, appearing alongside Malcolm on a major network's morning show. Speaking with quiet dignity, she described not only the details of the assault but the subtle discriminatory treatment that had preceded it. The slap was shocking, but the discrimination leading up to it was just as harmful, she explained. Being ignored, being treated with suspicion, being denied basic courtesy, these are indignities many black travelers experience routinely. The interviewer turned to Malcolm. As an executive at the airline, how did you miss these problems? Malcolm didn't flinch from the challenging question. I was looking at the wrong data. We tracked overall customer satisfaction but didn't adequately analyze experiences by demographic groups. We created reporting systems that made it difficult for discrimination complaints to be properly categorized and addressed. These were serious oversights that we're now correcting. As the interview concluded, Jasmine shared her hope that something positive would emerge from the painful experience. I'm having a daughter in 2 months, she said, resting a hand on her belly. I want her to grow up in a world where she's treated with dignity everywhere she goes, not just when people realize who her father is. The interview resonated widely, generating millions of shares and sparking discussions across the country. By afternoon, civil rights leaders were calling for industry-wide reforms, and congressional representatives were announcing plans for hearings on discrimination in commercial aviation. What had begun as one woman's traumatic experience on a flight to Atlanta had evolved into a national reckoning, and the catalyst for long overdue change. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Jasmine Washington cradled her infant daughter in the nursery of their Chicago home. Faith Rose Washington, named after both Resilience and Jasmine's grandmother, slept peacefully, unaware of the transformations her arrival had coincided with. She has your determination, Malcolm observed from the doorway, dressed in a sharper suit than usual. Already holding her head up ahead of schedule. Jasmine smiled. And your confidence. Have you seen how she stares people down when she's not getting what she wants? Malcolm checked his watch. The car will be here in 20 minutes. Are you sure you're both ready for this? Today marked Faith's first flight, and the official unveiling of Skyblue Airlines' new Training and Inclusion Center, which Jasmine had designed as part of her architecture firm's latest project. The past 6 months had brought remarkable changes. Malcolm's promotion to Chief Diversity Officer had been followed, just weeks later, by his appointment as CEO when his predecessor stepped down amid the fallout from the discrimination scandal. Under his leadership, Skyblue had implemented sweeping reforms that were gradually becoming industry standards. Jasmine had returned to her architecture firm after maternity leave, but with a new focus. Her design for the airline's training center had incorporated elements specifically aimed at fostering empathy and inclusion, from innovative simulation spaces where employees could experience air travel from different perspectives to physical environments that subtly reinforced the company's renewed values. As they prepared for departure, Jasmine reviewed the latest updates on her tablet. The criminal case against Brittany Reynolds had concluded with a plea agreement that included community service, mandatory counseling, and educational requirements focused on racial sensitivity. More significantly, Brittany had taken unexpected accountability for her actions, publishing a reflective essay about confronting her own biases that had gone viral in industry circles. Karen Miller and Tyler Brooks had faced different paths. Karen had initially fought her termination through union procedures but eventually withdrew her appeal after the whistleblower testimonies made her position untenable. Tyler had admitted to participating in discriminatory practices out of a desire to fit in with senior crew members and was now working with industry reform initiatives, sharing his experience as a cautionary tale in training sessions. Benjamin sent an update on the class action, Malcolm mentioned as they gathered their things. The incident had sparked a lawsuit against Sky Blue from passengers who had experienced similar discrimination, which Benjamin Chen was leading. Rather than fighting the case, Malcolm had taken the unprecedented step of acknowledging the company's responsibility and establishing a settlement fund along with commitments to structural changes. He says the final settlement approval should come through next week, Jasmine replied. The Passenger Advocacy Board will start reviewing cases by the end of the month. The board, comprised of civil rights attorneys, disability advocates, and diversity experts, would have oversight of discrimination complaints and the authority to recommend policy changes, a revolutionary approach in an industry accustomed to handling such matters internally. In the car to the airport, Jasmine thought about Elaine Hoffman, who had remained in contact after the incident. The older woman had channeled her outrage into action, founding a passenger rights organization that had already amassed over 100,000 members. Their crowdsourced database of discrimination incidents was becoming an invaluable resource for advocacy efforts and policy development. At the airport, they were met by Patricia Davis, now Sky Blue's chief people officer, who escorted them through security with minimal fuss. The terminal looked different from the last time Jasmine had seen it, subtle but meaningful changes implemented as part of the company's commitment to creating more inclusive spaces. Signs in multiple languages were more prominent. A new quiet room accommodated passengers with sensory sensitivities. Bathroom facilities had been redesigned with greater accessibility. And throughout the terminal, the company's new service pledge was displayed: dignity in flight for every passenger, every journey. As they approached their gate, Jasmine noticed passengers recognizing them, some nodding respectfully, others smiling encouragingly. Her story had become well known, but she had consistently redirected attention to the broader issues it represented. Boarding the aircraft brought a moment of tension, a flash of memory from that fateful day 6 months earlier. But the difference in experience was immediately apparent. The crew that greeted them reflected the diversity of the passengers they served. The lead flight attendant, a black woman named Desiree Johnson, welcomed them warmly but without fawning over their status. Most importantly, Jasmine observed the same respectful treatment extended to every passenger who boarded after them. As they settled into their seats, Faith still sleeping peacefully despite the new environment, Malcolm reached for Jasmine's hand. When I proposed the Washington Protocol for pregnancy accommodations, I never imagined our daughter would be one of the first to benefit from it, he said softly. The protocol, now adopted by 6 major airlines, established clear standards for accommodating pregnant passengers, from priority bathroom access to special meal options and flexible seating arrangements. It had been named in Jasmine's honor, though she had insisted it apply to all pregnancy-related accommodations, not just those for black women. She'll grow up in a different world than we did, Jasmine replied, gazing down at Faith. Not a perfect one, but maybe one where being treated with dignity isn't dependent on who you know or what you look like. As the plane taxied for takeoff, Jasmine couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them here, not just the physical distance between cities, but the distance between what had been and what could be. A single moment of standing up against injustice had cascaded into industry-wide transformation. Faith stirred slightly as the plane accelerated down the runway, but didn't wake. As they lifted into the clear blue sky, Jasmine saw it as the perfect metaphor, her daughter rising into a future with fewer barriers and greater possibilities, carried forward by the currents of change her parents had helped set in motion. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, confident and warm. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Skyblue Airlines Flight 472 to Atlanta. We're honored to have you flying with us today." Jasmine closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the past 6 months, the pain and the progress, the struggle and the transformation. There was still much work to be done, many systems to reform, many minds to change. But in this moment, watching her daughter sleep peacefully as they soared above the clouds, she allowed herself to feel something she had once thought impossible on days like this. This story teaches us powerful truths about confronting racism in everyday life. First, discrimination often operates in subtle ways until it reaches a breaking point. The escalating mistreatment Jasmine faced reflects how racism can build from microaggressions to outright violence. Second, documentation is crucial. Without multiple witnesses recording evidence, justice might never have been served. Third, true change requires both individual courage and institutional accountability. Jasmine's willingness to stand up for herself combined with Malcolm's structural reforms created lasting impact. Most importantly, this story reminds us that silence perpetuates injustice. Elaine Hoffman could have remained quiet like other passengers, but her decision to speak up made a difference. When we witness discrimination, our choices matter. By supporting victims, documenting incidents, and demanding accountability, everyday people can help dismantle systems of oppression that persist when good people do nothing. What would you do if you witnessed discrimination like Jasmine experienced? Has this story changed how you'll respond if you see someone being treated unfairly in public? Comment below with your thoughts on standing up against injustice, even when it's uncomfortable. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if you believe everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of race, gender, or background. Thank you for joining me for this powerful story about overcoming racism, and remember, sometimes the most important change starts with one person refusing to accept the unacceptable.